I'm Gared Shaffer. I'm the weeds field specialist for SDSU Extension, based out of the Watertown Regional Center. I mainly focus on weed issues, but some research I focus on is dealing with herbicides and how it interacts with cover crops and everything in between. So a lot of questions that we get in the field is how do herbicides and herbicide residuals affect the cover crop themselves. Either it's after a cash crop or that's a prevent plant situation. So cover crops are used again for soil health purposes, but mainly what I'm focused on is weed suppression and how herbicides themselves affect the cover crop establishment and then long-term effects. So looking at, first off, you have to look at the label. So a herbicide label is a law. So when you're looking at the label, you want to do multiple things. First off, you want to look at rotational restrictions. So if the certain cover crop species is a singular species, you're planting it and it's on the label, and it says on the label you can plant it within, let's say for example, 1 week after application, then you can go ahead and do that. But the majority of these cover crop species are mixes, and they're going to fall in the category of other crops. And that's usually going to be anywhere from a month to 18 months after the herbicide application itself. So pay attention to that. And then along with that, grazing, haying restrictions. A lot of labels now are actually telling you specifically if you can graze or hay a cover crop if planted after a cash crop. For example, after corn, herbicide labels give a clear example of not grazing or haying it if a cash crop is harvested for corn silage, let's say, and then a cover crop is planted after that, and that intends to be grazed. The label sometimes will say that's not allowed, so you have to follow that. If labels aren't clear on that situation, I would advise calling the chemical company itself or a representative and get clarity on that issue. Other issues you want to look at on labels before you decide what to do with the cover crop or what you can plant after a herbicide application would be looking at soil properties, pH properties, and also organic matter levels in the soil that you are planning to plant the cover crop in. That will all interact with different herbicides and how those will longevity, how long the herbicide residual will last. So it could be shorter, it could be longer, and also of course moisture levels. It depends. So if it's a drier environment, residuals will last longer than they would in a wetter environment. For example, if I had a herbicide application after corn silage here, or even in corn silage, there's a long residual pre-emergent before corn silage was cut, and then the cover crop was planted after that, versus like southeast South Dakota, like Beersford area, versus maybe out by Gettysburg. There's going to be a different environment there, different soil properties, different weather. So that's all going to come into being a factor how that's affected. Also, other restrictions and labels could be, they could have an actual section on the label that says cover crop restrictions, and that might give more clarity to what you can and can't do. So from research we've found the last few years that will be published, at least as a fact sheet within the next year, after corn silage and after wheat, we sprayed a lot of long residual herbicides, either early on in wheat, like in May. In corn silage, a lot of those were pre-emergence or early post that had potential problems with cover crops. And then we figured out the percent loss of the cover crop stand after we planted the cover crops after corn silage was harvested. And we wanted to see the percent loss on those cover crops. From what we can see so far, the data is showing that the percent loss is lower than expected. So if you want to do a lot of cover crop species mixes after corn silage and after wheat in the state, a lot of these long residual herbicides will not be a major factor when it comes to just growing a cover crop for soil health purposes. But again, you will want to have look at the label to see if it's able to be grazed or hayed in those situations. Also, like after oats, a lot of herbicides used within oats won't be an issue with cover crops if planted after the oat harvest. A lot of those are growth regular herbicides, so 2,4-D, dicamba mixes or something like that. Those are not going to be an issue as long as you're waiting upwards of a month to maybe even 2 months. And then other species that you might plant within like an interseeding situation. So if you're going interseeding into corn rows, anything that's not a contact, non-residual herbicide you're going to run into issues with. You might be able to grow something, but if you want to graze or hay it down the road, you're going to have issues. So if you just want it there for soil holding capabilities or soil health reasons in general, you'll be okay with intercropping, but you're going to run into a lot of issues when you come into residual herbicides. You're very limited when it comes to those options. So if there's any questions, you can contact me in Aberdeen Regional Center, or you can email me, and all that information's on the SDSU Extension website.